Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the City of Beaumont regular council meeting of Tuesday, May the 11th. As always, we are pleased to be here today on the traditional territory of Treaty 6. We acknowledge all those who share a deep connection with this land. The City of Beaumont respects the histories, languages, and cultures of all of Canada's First Peoples, whether they be of First Nation, Métis, or Inuit descent, and appreciates that their presence continues to enrich Canada's vibrant communities. We are all treaty people. Just as we get going today, we have two proclamations that I'd like to read out today. The first being National Public Works Week from May 16th to 22nd of 2021. Whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life and well-being of the people of Alberta. And whereas these infrastructure facilities and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works professionals who are engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of government and the private sector who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment, and solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for the citizens, civic leaders, and children in Alberta to gain knowledge of and to maintain a progressive interest and understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in their respective communities. And whereas the year 2021 marks the 61st annual National Public Work Week sponsored by the American Public Works Association, now therefore be it resolved that I, Mayor John Stewart, do hereby proclaim May 16th to 22nd, 2021 as National Public Works Week in the City of Beaumont, Alberta, dated the 7th day of May, 2021. And our second one, which is a subject near and dear to our heart, economic development. It is Economic Development Week from May 9th to 15th, 2021. Whereas the International Economic Development Council is the largest professional economic development organization dedicated to serving economic developers. And whereas for almost 50 years, Economic Developers Alberta has been Alberta's leading economic development network committed to advancing the economic development profession by providing resources, professional development, and networking opportunities. And whereas economic developers promote economic well-being and quality of life for their communities by creating, retaining, and expanding jobs that facilitate growth, enhance wealth, and provide a stable tax base. And whereas economic developers stimulate and incubate entrepreneurism in order to help establish the next generation of new business, which is the hallmark of Alberta's economy. And whereas economic developers are engaged in a wide variety of settings, including rural and urban, local, state, provincial, and federal governments, public-private partnerships, chambers of commerce, universities, and a variety of other institutions. And whereas economic developers attract and retain high-quality jobs, develop vibrant communities, and improve the quality of life in their regions. And whereas economic developers work in the City of Beaumont. And now therefore it be resolved that I, Mayor John Stewart, do hereby proclaim May 9th to 15th, 2021 as Economic Development Week in the City of Beaumont, Alberta, dated the 7th day of May, 2021. Two very important groups of people that work within our municipalities and deserve to be recognized. So congratulations to those. Are there any changes or modifications to the agenda, City Clerk?
Thank you, Your Worship. Administration would like to note that the agenda was updated with attachments to item 12A, correspondence, Better Beaumont Dog Park Committee, regarding Beaumont Dog Park expansion from proposed 4 acres and dog park feedback summary. This item has been placed on the consent agenda for approval. As well, I believe our CAO would like to speak to an amendment coming on the agenda as well.
Theo?
Yes, Mayor Stewart, we'd like to add a closed session, 14A. Was and this, I can't remember the name of it, Miranda, it was just an oversight. It was the ECDEV discussion. So Miranda will be able to add the proper point language to it.
Okay, so we'll add 14A and call it Economic Development Update. That's been a standing item for a while, so that's okay. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda or adopt the agenda as amended? Councillor Hendricks.
Move. Thank you.
Discussion on the motion. All in favor? That carries unanimously, which brings us to the consent agenda tonight. I would move that council consent to approve the following agenda items without debate. Item 5A, regular council meeting minutes of April 27th, 2021. Item 10A, Councillor Barnhart's report for information. Item 12A, Better Beaumont Dog Park Committee, Beaumont Dog Park expansion from proposed 4 acres and dog park feedback summary for information. Discussion on the motion. Can I get the votes cleared from the last vote? Thank you. Seeing none, all in favor? And that carries unanimously. Appreciate that. Voting buttons seem to be working better tonight. Which brings us to item 4, open forum. There are no registered presentations in the open forum. We have no public hearings this evening, which brings us to item 7A, registered presentations, waste to energy overview presentation from Mr. Mark Parker of Morris Northfield. Ooh, we lost him. There we go. Mr. Parker, welcome to City of Beaumont Council meeting. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Honored to be here. Let me share my screen to make this easier, and hopefully I can do this well. Just a thumbs up from somebody if we're looking at the right.
Looking good.
Okay, so I was trying to follow along on YouTube, but I think I was a little bit behind. So I don't know if they gave me an introduction. That part's not really important. What is important, I'm here to talk about waste to energy. So I gave this presentation I'm the technical advisor for the Leduc District Regional Waste Management Authority. That's sort of like half my time. The other half of my time, I'm a consultant. I'm an engineer. I've worked in solid waste pretty much since I got out of university, and waste energy is something I'm quite interested in. And the idea of this particular presentation is just to give a 10-minute overview of what waste energy is, where we're at with it in general in the province, and then more specifically what the Leduc District Regional Waste Management Authority is doing, looking at it in sort of a long-term outlook as a possible solution for us. So I'll talk about that, the role, how we evaluate it. I do this for the authority, but I also do it for other clients in my consulting world. What some of the vendors and technologies we've looked at, and then I have like some myths and facts that I've shared with quite a few, whether it's politicians or staff, and they seem to like it, and then close off and obviously leave it for some questions. So this slide I always say is the most important slide in waste energy, and that's whether I'm giving a 10-minute talk like now or a 3-hour workshop. It's this is really the takeaway for me. If I could have the world know one thing about waste to energy, it's this: that the primary goal of waste to energy is to process the waste and reduce the volume. It's not to create energy. Energy is a byproduct, and it's a nice byproduct because it's marketable and those sorts of things. But your primary goal is that you have you need processing for your waste. If the primary goal was energy, then these energy companies would be looking for garbage all the time to put into their systems. That's not really the case. So what is waste energy? This itself could be like a very, very long topic because there's so many different technologies. There's mass burn, there's pyrolysis, and there's gasification, and there's chemicals added to certain ones and other sort of proprietary type processes. But really there's two types. There's the traditional system, which is basically a power plant, but instead of putting in, say coal, for example, you're going to put in your garbage or waste. And then there's the more advanced systems that are looking at turning that waste into an actual fuel product instead of just getting the heat off of it. And so where does it fit? It's not waste to energy. I think oftentimes is advertised, or people think. I thought this at the very start before I got into the industry, that it was sort of a magic bullet that's going to take care of all your problems. It's not the case. It's as far as internationally accepted priorities on waste, it falls down the chain. So it's better than landfilling without any recovery, but it's not. It's from a triple bottom line perspective or anything like that. It's not as important as reducing or reusing or recycling or all those sorts of things. And many jurisdictions have thresholds you have to that need to be met on, say, recycling or diversion until you can consider waste energy. And it's just part of an integrated system. So if you have, say, a waste to energy facility, this facility that's taking your garbage and usually through a thermal process getting energy out of it, that is not, it's not going to be the only component of your system. You still have the recycling, the organics, and then with thermal treatment, you still have to have landfill as well. I'll talk about that a little bit later in the myth, in some of the myths, facts and myths, but there's bottom ash that usually comes out of these systems. There's downtime. There's still a need. You're still going to have some residuals at the end that require something like landfill disposal. And so for the Leduc District Regional Waste Management Authority, I've been the technical advisor for a little over a year there, but I've been evaluating waste to energy since quite long before that. I was in Ontario doing primarily that for about a year in 2013. But basically for the Leduc District Regional Waste Management Authority, we look at a few things that really, when a technology provider comes, these three things eliminate usually like 99% of them. And the first one isn't all that important, but it's just that, you know, if the end product is so great, the energy or whatever, that you should be responsible for marketing it. So we're not caught in a bad business arrangement. That's usually never a problem. But the second one is a huge one. We want them to prove that the technology or equipment they have has done this at the same sort of scale that we're looking for and with the same type of material. It's a lot different than putting straight plastic through than residual waste that's in your garbage bag. And then the third one is we do have landfill space out at the Leduc landfill. So we're, we want to make sure that the process, that it's somewhat feasible on a per ton basis, because we're not in a huge rush. We're interested, but not in a huge rush. So that basically, that screening analysis, if we want to call it that, eliminates many from further consideration at this point. So here's a list of some of these names might be familiar. There's more. We're adding names to this vendor list all the time. The reason we sort of put this when presenting to the authority board, it's just to give an idea that we are aware of basically everybody in the marketplace. They come to us. They will go to councillors, mayors, politicians, whoever, and some of them are really cool technologies. But we are aware that there's no surprises out there for us. And so the general status in Alberta, I struggle with this first one, but I do think it's true that Enerchem is the first full-scale operational facility with residual municipal waste. So that's the Edmonton gasification plant. And then there's several smaller municipalities that are quite interested at some of these newer technologies. I've helped some of them look at it from an assessment standpoint. But right now, the bottom line is there aren't any proven economically viable options for the authority right now. Based on our evaluation criteria, we really, to use maybe a poor term, we don't want to get caught with our pants down. We want to make sure that it's the right technology for us if that happens, if we end up going to waste energy. And the fact is, like I said, many players come into the market often, but the technologies are quite similar. So, if a technology comes and says this is the brand new silver bullet, fix all your problems, that's probably not the case. And it's probably very, very similar to some other technology that's already out there. And that challenge is from a technical standpoint, it's just how hard it is to process what's in garbage bags, because it can vary. Some of it doesn't have a high energy system. So if you're thinking of that as a fuel source for especially at a smaller scale that we're dealing with, I mean, that's a tough system to run. We're getting better. Technology providers are getting better and closer, but they're usually not there yet. And so a few statements and the myths, the true or false, and I'll go through these quickly just so that there is time for questions. So thermal waste energy has no future. I'm going to say that's false, considering how many plants there are worldwide, 800, 400 in Europe. There's different drivers to make that happen there compared to, say, Alberta. But again, I think it's false. The other one, thermal waste energy will reduce recycling. That's false. So I talked earlier about how it's part of an integrated system. And normally what happens is you're using waste to energy to get that last piece of energy out of the waste when you've already sort of maximized recycling, etc. It said earlier that, you know, the statement that it'll eliminate the need for landfills. No, this isn't a magic bullet. There's no waste energy system that's going to eliminate the need for a landfill. This one is a large one, that the revenue from the waste to energy, the energy side of it, can pay for everything and put money back into the community. I make this challenge to people all the time. If that's ever happened, show me. You know, I will take back this statement if it ever becomes false, but it's just the capital and operating costs are just too high to be fully offset by energy revenues. It's nice to have the energy revenue, but as I said before, the energy isn't what drives these systems. It's a need to process your waste. That's what their primary goal is. And then emerging technologies can carry a high risk. That's very true. And you don't have to search too far in the waste to energy world if you do an internet search to see where promises were made but could not be delivered. And it's usually not because they didn't think it could be delivered. It's that you know, the technology does look good on paper, but it hadn't been commercially proven yet. And there's always growing pains along the way. And we've seen lots of that. And especially when we try to, when vendors or technology providers try to go from a certain type of waste that's very easy to deal with, say a high plastic or something that has high energy value and is you know, fairly clean, into our garbage, and then tries to, you know, use our garbage bags, problems can arise. So there is a high risk if you're not looking at how proven it is. This one, that burning waste can cause health issues. Well, I shouldn't say it's false. It's true. If you just, you know, like I used to do back at my house when I was young, we had a burning barrel, and you know, that's not great for your health if you're standing over inhaling that. But with these waste to energy facilities, the air pollution control systems, APC systems, are very modern, and they're all over the world. This one is one that that sometimes can cause a little bit of contention, but waste energy is too expensive for smaller communities, and most of the time that's true. In most cases, there are thermal processes that are used for, say, like remote communities or camps, and that becomes the right for them. But generally, at this stage in 2021. You need a little bit of an economy of scale for it to work financially, especially compared to landfill space in a large open prairie. AD, that's a separate one, so I'll just skip over that. But the other one is energy prices are hurting waste to energy. Well, I mean, that can be updated, you know, sort of monthly based on fluctuations in energy prices, but it's true. I mean, that's part of it. Even large scale plants, although the energy doesn't drive it, that revenue helps. It helps offset to keep the fees reasonable. And this is just one of my favorite pictures. Sort of talks to this myth that waste energy facilities will never be sited close to anyone. And I'm going to say I'm very confident that's false, because this is in Paris. So downtown Paris, and that arrow's pointing to a large scale thermal-based waste energy plant, which is much larger than anything that the Leduc District Regional Waste Management Authority would look at. But nonetheless, that gives you an idea of just how modern and environmentally friendly, sophisticated the air pollution control systems are. So to quickly summarize, and again, I mean, each one of these topics, I could go on for a very, very long time. It's a cool waste energy, to me, is very interesting from a technical standpoint. But to summarize, the primary goal is to process the waste. The energy is nice, but that's not why you're doing why anyone should do waste energy. And the technical committee, and led by me with the authority, we're continually assessing options, and not only waste to energy, but like offtake sort of agreements with somebody who might use our waste for energy for a system they already have. And we have a process to evaluate it. It's really important to have that screening process, or else you can get led down the wrong road, expending energy where you don't need to. And currently there aren't any opportunities that fit our needs. But you know, I think the members can rest assured, if one comes up, we'll be on top of it. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. It was a great presentation. I got to admit, there's a couple things in there that I'm disappointed to hear, but open it up to Questions from members of council? Okay, seeing none, I got a couple. Because I know that St. Albert and the city of Edmonton are currently involved in a test pilot project. Have we monitored that from the Leduc waste?
Yep.
Perspective? And
through the chair, yeah, I could say that that we have. I don't remember all that I'm allowed to say about that one, but yeah, that one is, we were very aware. They met with us. The stage of that and the involvement they wanted from the authority, it wasn't something that provided any sort of benefit to the authority at the time. It wasn't. But yeah, we are very aware of that one.
okay, so I guess my next question is if we're not finding viable opportunities for the authority, is that because the authority is just too small and perhaps we need to look at a more regional level response?
That's yeah, the very good question. With the authority, we don't have a driver right now to say we need to waste energy, since we do have we have a landfill operating well, operating at a good tipping fee. But I think with some of the regional collaboration, I know like Kara and Mike are involved in the I forget what it's called, but a solid waste regional collaboration. That is some of the things. I don't know if they're looking directly at waste energy, but something like that, regionalizing. The reality is, yes, the higher the tonnage, the more there's economies of scales with this. So that might be a good idea in the future for sure.
Because I know that some of our regional partners, I've had some discussions with other mayors around the region, and I know our landfill's got a few years left, but landfills are tough. New landfills are tough to get approved, and we're starting to, as much as we're operating well in our landfills now, they're going to come to a useful lifespan end here in the next 10 to 15, 20 years. So as much as there isn't an opportunity now that you foresee, I would suggest that there's a little bit more urgency than you think, because if it takes 5-10 years to get a plant going, it's all time. So those are my only comments on it. One last time, other members of council. All right, thanks, Mark. Appreciate the presentation tonight. Waste energy is always an interesting topic, and I love watching new technologies come to fruition.
Yeah, thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks. Brings us to business item 8A, City of Beaumont Welcome Services. Ms. Wilson, floor is yours.
Thank you. Your worship, members of council, it's a pleasure to be here this evening to bring you the request for decision for the City of Beaumont Welcome Services, with the recommendation that council direct administration to work with the Mayor's office to finalise and implement a service that welcomes new residents to Beaumont with a welcome letter from the Mayor. So I think, as most of you are familiar, the former Welcome Wagon service ceased operations last spring, last April, May. And as a result of that, we have been without a welcome service in our community. There were a series of meetings that occurred in 2020. I personally wasn't part of them, but there were representatives from the administration, from the Chamber of Commerce. The former Welcome Wagon coordinator was part of those discussions, looking at what could take its place, like what could this look like? Were there any options? So those conversations actually started almost a year ago, and I have been brought into those conversations more recently. And so I know that this has come back to council on a couple of occasions, most recently in March, to bring back a report. So the details of the report, I'm not going to read through this word by word, but I think we needed to define what welcome services can be. And in doing that, we discovered a whole range of options for what those welcome services could look like. And I mean, they could include things like housing, transportation, looking at local attractions, connecting neighbors with neighbors. And I think through that research, it was determined that there are a couple of audiences for newcomers to our, for individuals coming to our community, so that they would be sort of split into the two groups of newcomers that are coming to Canada, that are settling, choosing Beaumont to settle in, and then other individuals that are perhaps relocating from anywhere, maybe in the province, maybe from a local municipality. So there's two streams and two sets of individuals that we probably would need to look at in this. And along with that, there's a couple of approaches. And so one of them would be, you know, a little bit more sort of passive. It would be that having a website, hoping to attract new residents to the website so that they could access our services or learn about the services that our community can provide, whether they be municipal or other community services. Or there could be that approach where individuals are actually reaching out to residents to provide them the information, which is a little bit more of the model of the former Welcome Wagon service. So obviously, I think we would all agree there are numerous outcomes to any type of welcome service. And again, a lot of different models. Some of these services are more focused towards the business community and making new residents aware of what the local businesses have to offer. In other communities, it's the approach of let's help them to be aware of the community services that the municipality or CVO groups offer and help get them connected to make registrations to those type of programs and activities. However, the fundamental outcome, I think, of any welcome service is that opportunity to be welcoming, to connect new residents with existing residents, so that we can build that sense of community and that support, which is probably why our new residents choose Beaumont as a community. The FCSS department is, I would say, informally providing opportunities already for new residents coming to our community. So whether that be newcomers to Canada or new residents that are just relocating. So more often, these residents are reaching the doorsteps of FCSS, whether that's via a phone call, whether that's via a referral, so that they certainly are reaching out. So they're reaching out to get a sense of what's available in the community and also to learn more about the services provided by FCSS. I think that the important thing for us is that there are a variety of programs that are already being offered, which build on that sense of community connection, sort of welcoming residents to the community, new or existing residents. And so I listed some of those in the report. I think you're all familiar with them. Our Good Neighbour program has really gained some traction over the years. The block parties are quite a successful opportunity for our residents to connect with other residents in their particular community or their neighborhood or area. We do the community barbecues, which I think all of you have been part of pre-COVID. We also have events like a volunteer appreciation event. So there are some existing events that certainly add value to the community for existing residents and our new residents to connect and meet new people and to learn about resources. I won't go into the individual programs. I think you're all aware of what the block parties entail, what the neighborhood program entails. There's also the other programming that is provided in the community through the FCSS department. So that information referral, that system navigation piece, I think is the key piece here. This is where FCSS does have the ability to connect residents. So whether that's connecting them to the recreation, whether that's connecting them to maybe other municipal services, even business services for that matter. If a resident comes through to FCSS, I think by virtue and the nature of what the department provides to the community, we seem to be that first point of contact for many individuals, even when we did have the previous welcome service. So I think, I mean, there are many options for the service, and in the research and the conversations that we've had, I've listed some of the options, you can all see them. So, I mean, it could be as simple as developing a welcome guide, could be placed on certainly the city's website, available for new residents to access. We could work with the community organizations to partner on a sort of a hybrid of the previous welcome wagon model. That would be another option. Creating a city-run program, which would require additional resources to operate. Current capacity isn't there at this time, but that is certainly another option. Or we could enhance the existing services, which are informally provided through FCSS, although they aren't specifically stated as FCSS welcome services. It is part of the programming that currently exists. So as far as next steps and where do we go with this, the recommendation is that those current services that are primarily offered, I shouldn't say we offer them all, but we do primarily offer those services, could be promoted through the letter that the mayor provides to new residents, to our community. And I think that was a suggestion that was brought up by Councillor Barnhart at a previous council meeting. So that certainly is an option. And I think, you know, as administration, we believe that that's a really good option to, it's a personal touch, right? It's that, you know, welcome to our community. I think you all have a copy of the letter. I don't know if you need me to bring that up, but I can certainly do that. So had attached a draft letter, sample letter, that perhaps would be considered for the mayor to send out. It's certainly very welcoming. It talks about us being an inclusive community. It talks about the resources that are certainly can be provided through the FCSS department as a point of contact. So that certainly would be one way of approaching this. So like I said, you have the sample that was attached to the report. Just sort of in concluding with this, I do want to emphasize that there was a lot of stakeholder engagement in this. Stressing again, I wasn't involved until sort of the early spring, late winter of this year. But as part of administration, I certainly had an opportunity to reach out to our Chamber of Commerce, reached out to the former Welcome Wagon, and we did have some discussions. The issue that presented itself during some of those discussions was certainly capacity. Capacity of the chamber, they spoke to limited capacity, and I know they recently have a new executive director. Certainly we're in support of some sort of service, but again, it was who had the capacity to do this. If council directs FCSS to continue what we're already doing, it would just be enhancing existing services. I don't see any budget impact in this particular recommendation. I think it's something that we do currently have the capacity, and if we didn't, we could identify that in the 2022 budget when we do our budget preparations. So I think I'd just like to open the floor to questions. I know this is a slightly different model, perhaps, than maybe some of you were thinking, but I certainly think that there is some merit to taking a look at this model and the accompanying letter from the Mayor and Council to welcome our newcomers. So thank you.
Appreciate the report very much. It was very comprehensive and been a long time coming. At this point, I'll open it up to questions from members of council. Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Wilson. It's great to see you back. I'm so glad you're able to come to the meeting tonight, and I appreciate the work that you've put into this particular issue. Yes, I did offer this as a suggestion at a previous meeting, as bare minimum. Let's put it that way. I'll put my cards on the table. I do think it's better to do something than to not address the issue at all. But I'm really curious. You said if council approves this model, what am I missing? In terms of the model, I see a letter and I see words that say enhance and promote, but I hear you saying we don't have any more resources. And honestly, I was hoping this would come forward before we did the spring budget so that we could get some additional resources. That didn't happen because of all the reasons you said. And I am disappointed. I really am, because waiting till 2022, there's so many competing demands. But honestly, you and I think, do know that a little bit of money in an FCSS budget can go a long way, because you can parlay that with volunteers and with other resources and partners. Anyway, that being said, can you expand a bit on what you would do in addition to the letter, if anything, to support this particular initiative?
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Barnhart. I think for us, there's an awareness piece for FCSS, certainly, an awareness piece to educate that these services, or many of these services, are available. I think that's probably the biggest factor here, because we do not, or FCSS does not specifically state that these services are provided in welcome services. When I use the word model, maybe a program would be the more correct term. So to me, in answering that question, I would say that able to communicate could be through the website. I think there are options, Councillor Barnhart, that we could definitely look at for raising this profile, for promoting welcome services offered through FCSS and through the city. I think that at minimum would be fairly easy to do, and financially that would be working with internal partners to be able to have that communication piece to create that awareness. I don't know if that answers your question.
I appreciate the resource issue, and I guess the other thought that I want to put on the table, because I've already raised a notice of motion about this, is to, where are we at with diversity and inclusion? Where are we at with the social master plan? Both of those issues, in my mind, not issues, both of those projects, initiatives, tie in with being inclusive and being welcoming to newcomers, to our both people who come from outside the country and people who are moving from St. Albert to Beaumont, or from one part of Beaumont to another Beaumont. I mean, we want to be inclusive no matter what. And I think these things can be tied together. That's the idea that I want to put into your thinking process as you raise awareness. But I, at this point, realize we have no other choice because we don't have the resources. I would love it if there was some way that we could find resources to add to this program. I've asked that before of council, but I think the best I can do is to bring it forward at a later date. But I'll wait and see if any of my other members of council have anything that they could propose. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other hands from members of council, But I think I catch the gist of where Councillor Barnhart's going. So I might add a small amendment to the recommendation and move that council direct administration to work with the mayor's office to finalize, implement a service that welcomes new residents to Beaumont with a welcome letter from the mayor, and for FCSS to continue to explore ways to enhance the welcome services and perhaps bring a proposal to budget 2022.
I appreciate that, Mayor. I would love to support that.
Okay, I'll let you move it if you want.
It doesn't matter to me who moves it as long as it happens.
All right, I'll still move it. All right, so there's the motion on the floor. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, call the question. And that carries unanimously. Thank you very much, Ms. Wilson, and it's great to see you back.
Great, thank you.
All right, so that brings us to item 8B, Joint Recreation Space Feasibility Study. Mr. Suter, I assume? Here we go.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good evening, Your Worship, members of council. We have consultant Mark Nolan from IBI Group going to join us for a brief presentation this evening. We're trying to get him in the waiting room right now, but I'll start and hopefully he'll join us shortly. So the subject tonight is Joint Recreational Space Feasibility Study. Recommendation that council receive the Joint Recreational Space Feasibility Study as information. A little bit of background. Our Places in Play Master Plan introduces the consideration of the development of recreation-focused intermunicipal collaboration frameworks with neighboring municipalities to ensure that recreation, culture, and parks services are delivered fairly and efficiently to residents and to support the achievement of other objectives in the master plan. In partnership with Leduc County, administration submitted a grant application through the Alberta Community Partnership Funding Stream for the funds to conduct a feasibility study to look at a joint recreation space between Leduc County and Beaumont. The grant application was successful, and IBI Group was the successful proponent on the work that was tendered. They went through a variety of master plans and planning documents and other things between Leduc County and Beaumont documents as part of their work, as well as working with both administrations. They looked at different gap analysis, engagement feedback, and planning work that was done in the past, reviewed the programming design of recreation needs, and tried to consolidate it all in one report, as well as looking at potential sites that you could do something like this in the future. We also took this draft report through the Recreation, Parks and Culture Advisory Committee, and they provided some good feedback, which was referred back to the consultant for the final report. And I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Nolan. I see he's joined us here. He's got a brief PowerPoint that he's going to walk through, and then we'll be available for some questions. Thank you.
Great, Mr. Nolan.
Thank you, Paul. Good evening, everybody. Okay, is that visible? Presentation?
Yep.
Okay, good. So 8 steps to the presentation. Introduction. The primary project goals were to develop a schematic design and cost estimate for a recreation site that met the city's design criteria for active recreation so that future funding sources can be investigated for the phased development of a site. Relevant plans and studies for both Beaumont and Leduc County were considered to guide the search for a suitable site. I won't go into the detail of all of them, but in particular, the Leduc County Vistas Community Parks and Open Space Strategy for the area west of Beaumont identified an interest in continuing to partner on sports field development that is beneficial to both municipalities, Leduc County and the City of Beaumont. part of the project, we developed a design program and prepared an analysis of recreation needs. The gaps in provision of facilities for outdoor active recreation were investigated. It was identified that track and field may be accommodated with senior high school locations in Beaumont. A multi-use artificial field is being considered elsewhere in the city that is best located next to a high school for their use. The main recreation need identified was for ball diamonds for tournaments. The engagement, stakeholder and public engagement that was conducted during the project and as part of the needs assessment included input from the city's Recreation, Parks and Culture Advisory Board, as well as input from Leduc County staff. So the design program which was developed, which essentially outlines the type of activities and associated facilities that are required for an active recreation site of this nature, was prepared, and the design program considered the following: ball diamonds, soccer fields and multi-use fields, a concession and washroom building to support those activities, a possible RV park for event use, a dogs off leash area, a multi-use event or passive recreation area for things like picnicking or group gatherings, a sledding hill, possible winter cross-country skiing tracks or trails connecting to the space, and also a space for yard operations, so storage of equipment for the sports fields, materials, that sort of thing. Based on that design program, a model site plan was prepared, and it identified that a minimum site area of approximately 20 hectares or around 50 acres would be necessary to accommodate the range of activities identified in the design program. And the bubble diagram on the right identifies some of the activities and the associated infrastructure that would be required for that site development. So armed with the design program and the identified site area that would be required for an active recreation park of this nature, we undertook an analysis of potential sites. It was determined that investigation of potential sites should only include county-owned land within 10 kilometres of Beaumont. The criteria for identification and analysis of the potential sites included access from a major roadway, suitable zoning, minimal environmental constraints, a suitable size to accommodate the required amenities, and we already mentioned the 20 hectares, suitable slope, so a relatively flat site, except for the sledding hill, of course, potentially, and also that the site should be currently owned county public reserve. We prepared a context map, and based on our analysis of the park, the context within 10 kilometres of Beaumont, we came up with two potential sites. One was the Reservoir site. If you can see the hand moving, just west of Beaumont in the Vistas area adjoining Black Mud Creek. The other site was adjoining TP 502, directly south of the city of Beaumont. That particular site was purchased by the county about 10 years ago and had previously been considered as a possible depot site. That never went forward. It's currently agricultural land. So, as mentioned, the site in TP, adjoining TP 502, is about 6 kilometres directly south from the city centre. There is a a site assessment plan at the bottom of the screen. It shows the larger area to the east as the best potential area for programmed active recreation, including the activities mentioned previously in sports fields, as well as 2 possible potential vehicular access points from TP 502. The reservoir site, which is located on the east bank of Black Mud Creek in Leduc County, is about 800 meters south of TP 510. It is 2.5 kilometers west of the boundary of the city of Beaumont. Of the overall 65 hectares of land that the county owns, quarter section, approximately 27 hectares of the east part of the site is above the flood fringe. A good portion of the rest of the site is affected by flooding from Black Mud Creek, and some of the area on the west side of the site is used for other purposes. So the plan on this page identifies the reservoir site. You can see in the green area there, potential usable area above the flood fringe, approximately 27 hectares. We also prepared a site analysis of the reservoir site, identifying possible locations that address the design program that we had prepared. It shows existing and potential vehicular access points. At the moment, vehicular access is from the west, 9th Street, which will be part of the future Spine Road. That currently provides access to the Reservoir building, which the site is named after. It's a pump station for water main. And this broadly showed the possible distribution of activities on that site. Also shows that there is existing acreage, residential acreages to the east, undeveloped land to the north, but there are plans for that area, which is identified as Irvine Creek. So this slide shows a comparative analysis of the potential sites. I won't go into the detail of it. It does show that Leduc County owns both sites, gives the approximate distance from the city, and shows the zoning and legal addresses. So this information was provided to the city's Recreation, Parks and Culture Advisory Board. The advisory board reviewed the context plan and the design program and the site assessment plans for both alternative sites. Their unanimous preference was for the reservoir site. The reasons for this selection are outlined below. The major reasons include access to the reservoir site from the Spine Road or future Spine Road in Nisku could provide easier access from Edmonton. There could be potential use of the site by businesses in the Nisku Business Park and possible related sponsorship. There may be potential for more municipal reserve to be acquired from adjoining lands, potentially from the unsubdivided land to the north. There's also potential on the site for 2 vehicular access points, as I mentioned, the main one being from the west. There is a current minor access there already, but there's also an undeveloped road reserve in the southeast corner of the site, which could provide an alternative vehicular access point. The reservoir site also has some planning background. It was identified in the Vista strategy as a possible district park site. The reasons why the southern TP 502 site was not preferred include the fact that it's not adjoining the growth area of Beaumont. It also has no planning background related to recreation. it's not previously been identified for recreation uses. So we subsequently advanced the site analysis and prepared a concept plan for the preferred reservoir site. That concept plan included the following main components: vehicular access, including an upgraded access road from the west, baseball diamonds, including tournament quality diamonds and other regular activity diamonds, soccer and multi-use fields, a dogs off leash area, parking for both events and regular park use, a multi-purpose building, an RV parking area, an operations yard adjoining the existing pump station, trails that could join the site and extend along the east side of Black Mud Creek and also into the adjoining vistas area and potentially across into the Nisku commercial and industrial area. The site with the side slopes going down into Black Mud Creek also provided an opportunity for a natural sledding hill. So the plan for the site is depicted here. In the northeast corner, we have arrangement of 4 adult-sized ball diamonds. Immediate below would be a tournament, an upgraded tournament diamond, possibly with bleachers. Below that, we have soccer fields and then a multi-purpose field at the south corner that could be used for football, soccer, or other activities. There is a roadway access that provides vehicle access through the spine of the site. A sledding hill, as I mentioned earlier, on the side slope down to Black Mud Creek. A portion of that area could also be used for dogs off leash area. And there's another opportunity for dogs off leash area just immediately south of the sledding hill. Potential RV parking along the top northwest edge of the creek. And then, as mentioned, the reservoir pump station is located right here. It's the blue rectangle. And there was a space identified for a storage building for maintenance and materials. The main vehicular access would be from this point from the west, comes across an existing causeway which crosses the creek up to the pump station, and that could be enhanced and then connected down through the site. There's also potential for future vehicular access and trail access to the north into the future subdivision adjoining Irvine Creek. And there's also potential, I think, emergency or maintenance access from this undeveloped roadway right-of-way at the southeast corner. As I mentioned, there's an opportunity for trail links. And so there could be future trail connections down Black Mud Creek as far as Saunders Lake, and also connecting up here into Irvine Creek and across into the Nisku industrial area. We provided a broad preliminary cost estimate for the project, and I won't go into the details of that at the moment. We also looked into the operational model and phasing for the potential development of the site. It was thought that the most beneficial operational model would be a joint use agreement between the City of Beaumont and Leduc County. The roles and responsibilities should follow the current service delivery of each municipality. We broadly identified 3 potential phases of site development, which could be based on available funding. This phasing would focus initially on providing and enhanced access to the site from the west, vehicular access, grading and landscaping of the site, and provision of basic sporting facilities so that the fields could start to be used. And they could be supported by temporary infrastructure, for instance, temporary event infrastructure. And as funding became available, more permanent infrastructure for things like paved parking areas and amenities building could be developed as funding becomes available. So the next steps for the project include ongoing coordination with Leduc County to determine funding sources, looking to obtain funding for further design development and initial enhancement of the site in 3 to 5 year timeframe. Once funding is obtained, there would need to be additional site investigations and detailed design to enable tendering and then subsequent construction of site improvements as part of a phased development. And that is the end of the presentation, if there are any questions.
Appreciate your coming in tonight and giving us this presentation. It's a really exciting project, and I think we're just finally starting to catch up with recreational needs in Beaumont. I think this project would help start moving us toward the future and staying ahead of that curve a little bit. But I will open it up to questions and comments from members of council. I don't know who was first. Councillor Van Newkirk, followed by Councillor Montgomery.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I really like how that's come together, and I really love seeing some camping option in there. I think that's awesome. And the site design, I got it up on the big monitor here, and it just flows so nicely. So I really like the design. Has this been presented to Leduc County yet, or are we first, or have they seen it already, Mark? Or
I think Paul might be best to answer that question.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councillor Van Newkirk. It was supposed to be presented a couple of weeks ago, but it was delayed, and I was told it was either this week or last week or next week. I'm not sure what their calendar is, but around the same time.
Yeah. Okay. And I know, having been through our places in play in a different committee, that we did kind of a check-in with our places in play around how have we done relative to some of the recommendations in that, and similar to what the mayor said, a facility like this would start to move us towards the future. So I do like that idea. But that being said, in our future capital planning, is there provision for, I assume there's provision for recreation moving forward, but would that current provision for recreation programming moving forward be adequate, or would we need to start planning, an alternative, year over year funding for some project like this?
I think it's a little premature for that answer, but Councillor Van Newkirk, I think we have to let Leduc County hear and find the report, review the report, and I think administrations will continue to talk about it and to see what they're thinking after they receive this information and where it might fit into the future. And I mean, they own that land; it's designated for that sort of use, and they have to be willing, obviously, to cooperate in this manner. They were willing to get to this point, so we're optimistic that the conversations will continue, and then we'll decide, I guess, at what point we bring it into a future capital planning.
Yeah, no, it's exciting. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Councillor Munkoff-Swain, followed by Councillor Barnhart, followed by Councillor Dunlop.
Yeah, thanks, and appreciate the presentation. I think this checks off a lot of boxes. I really appreciate the regional collaboration angle here, and that we're not just looking at Beaumont and what can we do, but broader. And I think that's the future for us in terms of this future recreational piece. So, great job executing on that grant. This is really exciting. I guess that the question I have, and you talked a little bit about next steps in your presentation, Mr. Nolan, but maybe for Mr. Suter. So you said you're going to carry on the conversations, but at what point does council need to give direction to carry on this comment? Like we understand that you've got that, but Now that we've spent all this grant dollars to be able to get us to this point, just want to make sure that we've given enough clarity for administration whether council wants us to kind of go down this road, or we're going to obviously significant other competing priorities for the city. So at what point do we have a more specific conversation around whether we want you guys to pursue this or not in more detail?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Munkoff-Swain. It would be my intention to speak with Leduc counties again after they've had this presentation to their council and see what the feedback is there, and to see if we can't align what we're both thinking as far as, do we bring this into a capital budget future planning this fall, or is it further out? I just don't want to be too ahead of what they're thinking, because it's their land. They have to be a willing and able partner on this. So that would be my thought. Just let them go through this exercise. We'll have a conversation, see where they're thinking, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I agree. And thank you for that answer. I think none of us here, including yourselves, want to spend all this time and money delivering on this product, and then for other priorities to kind of pick up and this kind of fades away, and we look back in 5 years like, remember we looked at that option, right? So just wanted to check in and be interested to hear once we get the update from Leduc County about where they're at, but also wanted to highlight and recognize that there are other competing priorities, as you know, for our city. So that's all from me, but really appreciate the update. It was very interesting.
Thank you very much, Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you very much, Mr. Nolan and Mr. Suter for the information. I want to delve a little bit more and just hear your thoughts, and particularly Mr. Nolan, around the elements of the design. And just to kind of put it out there, in particular, I'm really interested some of the work that I'm doing with children around the impact of natural areas and just expanding their opportunities to commune with nature, to put it one way, but to have natural places in which to go to do that. I'm all for the sports and recreation, don't get me wrong, but I'm also wondering whether you've looked into that given your line of work. And I'll also put the other one out on the table, and that is the winter activities. You do have the sledding hill, which I really love. Cross-country skiing, I didn't hear you, but I thought I read it somewhere. So if you could just expand on those two concepts, I'd really appreciate it.
Sure, thanks for the question, Councillor. First question, in terms of opportunities for nature play. Yes, the graphic plan does focus on the distribution of the active sporting facilities. But in this particular location, there is an opportunity for integrating natural landscape, and we have identified that further in the detailed report. Not so much in the presentation, sorry. Being on the edge of Black Mud Creek, as you're probably aware, it has been engineered over time, but there's certainly an opportunity to reintroduce more of a naturalized landscape for that area. In fact, there's a current study going on for the Nisku business area, and some feedback from that has identified that there's an interest from that population and also from the East Vistas community to have more natural areas integrated into the park space. So there is a lot of opportunity to recreate natural landscape on the edges of this site, and certainly we could integrate that in portions of the site enhancement, including the dogs off leash area. In terms of winter activities, I did briefly mention the opportunity for cross-country skiing trails. Of course, you don't need much infrastructure for those, as you need a trailhead somewhere people can park, maybe go to the washroom, and then if trails need to be set, that becomes more of an operational thing. But with sledding and cross-country skiing, there's two potential winter activities. You could integrate some sort of skating area on a site like this if desired. There would be a water supply to support that. So there is opportunity for winter activities, and we did consider that. As I mentioned, it's detailed a little bit more in the detailed report. Hopefully that answers your question.
No, it does. Thank you, Mr. Nolan. And I've made notes of it, and I'm kind of hoping the administration will kind of put that down on the list. We need to revisit that again in terms
Yeah,
of.
and naturalized landscapes is one of my passions, so it is something that we did
won't forget.
identify. There are some constraints to it in Black Mud Creek because some of that land is leased. But over time, I think that one of the goals we identified in the East Vista strategy for Leduc County was that naturalized landscapes could be reintroduced to the creek to make it look more like a creek.
I would just emphasize that if we've learned something as well during COVID time, is that being outside is something that we can do safely. So anything we can do to encourage that and encourage our school kids to be able to go on nature walks and hikes and things like that. That's what I'm talking about. So I really do appreciate that opportunity, and thank you very much. Appreciate it.
And just to follow up, this site and its location does act as somewhat of a hub for potential trails, because you have Irvine Creek to the north, you've got the extent of Black Mud Creek and connect across west into the Nisku area and east into East Vistas. So it's a good site for a trailhead for trails.
Thank you very much. Councillor Danluck.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. Good evening, Mr. Nolan. Great report, very well thought out, very well presented, very well laid out in terms of being able to follow it and recommendations and great wording. Very happy with this. I'm very excited about this opportunity because it is, in my mind, a very smart use of a way to go forward with our regional partner. I mean, if Beaumont were to do this on our own, the land acquisition costs alone would kill the project. With Leduc County considering offering the land as part of this opportunity for us, any money from Beaumont in the future can be used for actual physical amenities, not actually buying land. That makes this project much more feasible for us to consider going forward. So I'm excited about the opportunity of partnering with Leduc County on this opportunity and in the future see where it takes us. But a great report, good information. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Danluck. Is there a member of council willing to remove the recommendation that council receive the joint recreational space feasibility study as information? Councillor Danluck.
So move, your worship. Thank you.
Fair enough. Discussion on the motion. Okay, seeing none, I only have one comment. This is a great opportunity. I'd hate to see this pass by and be one of those reports that got put on a shelf and shelved. So I don't want this to be one of those ones where we do a report and then a good idea goes to die. So that's my only comment. Seeing no further hands, call the question. All in favor? And that carries unanimously, which will bring us to a 5-minute break back at 7:20. Thank you very much, Mr. Nolan. Appreciate the presentation and your time tonight. Mr. Suter, thank you very much for your time and effort, and look forward to hearing the updates from your discussions with Leduc County on this particular project.
Thank you. Good night.
I'd like to reconvene the regular council meeting of Tuesday, May the 11th. We are now on item 8C, community grant recommendations. Tonight's your night, buddy.
Thank you, your worship, members of council. Topic is the Beaumont Community Grant Program, April 1, 2021 intake funding recommendations. And the recommendation this evening is that council award the following current grants as recommended by the Beaumont Grant Funding Advisory Committee. We've got Mr. Kashmir Gill on screen here to represent the committee, and he can speak specifically to these applications that we're recommending award. The background, a little bit of background is the community grant program is to fund one-time projects and initiatives, operating expenses of organizations in a developmental stage once per fiscal year for up to 3 years within the first 5 years, or events that are primarily designed and delivered for the general public that attract visitors or significantly contribute to local economy and promote volunteerism. For April 1, 2021 intake, administration received 5 applications from various organizations within Beaumont for a total requested funds of $37,224. And the grant funding committee met individually, collects and evaluates each of the applications according to the council approved eligibility requirements, criteria, and scoring guidelines. And then funding recommendations were determined as per the ranking criteria. The overall rankings are summarized in attachment 1. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Gill to elaborate a little further on the 5 applications. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Your Worship and members of Council, I'm happy to be here before you this evening to represent my fellow colleagues on the Grant Funding Advisory Committee. First, a big thank you to Paul and Sandra for their strong administrative support to the committee. I think it goes without saying that their hard work makes our lives much easier. And as a background, the new committee has 5 members, 3 returning members, Grace Frey, Amber Roseborough, yours truly, and 2 new members, Amy May and Leonard Spinks. And frankly, it's good to see new community volunteers stepping up to serve on this committee. I have to say this is a very engaged and competent team of volunteers. So my personal thanks to each of them for their dedication to community service. Paul alluded to the 5 applications. It was also good to see new organizations coming forward. And I think that's a tribute to the outreach efforts of Paul and his team. 4 organizations volunteered to make personal presentations to the committee. We found this to be very helpful. Some of the written applications had gaps and weaknesses. Of course, it added to the length of the meeting, and in the future, I'm sure administration will look at this to limit the number of presentations. As Paul mentioned, members engaged in healthy and robust discussions, bringing in different perspectives to the table and then reaching consensus on ratings and funding levels that are being recommended to Council. So very briefly, the first application was from Shamps Valley Fundraising Society. This is an opportunity for making improvements to the school's park by installing 3 new benches and 2 picnic tables on concrete foundations. The presenters highlighted the limitations of the current site and to the limited facilities that exist. And there's also a demand from the surrounding communities, including daycares. And they also indicate that this is a high growth sector of the city. Overall, while the written application had a number of gaps and weaknesses, the organization's presentation helped to address many questions that the committee members had. The volunteers are very energetic and they were working towards addressing infrastructure gaps they see in the school park. It was noted again that this project will benefit many residents and users from the surrounding residential developments. The funding ask was $5,424, and the committee is recommending approval of that same amount. Second application was from the Beaumont and District Agriculture Society. Here we were presented with an opportunity to provide a new home for the Magnan Heritage House by funding foundation construction at the Agriculture Society. We were told that this is the 2nd oldest house built in Beaumont in around 1919, and it does require a new foundation at this new home. This particular facility will be used for administration and displays. The house has been moved to the site already with in-kind contributions from local moving companies to the tune of about $25,000. Overall, we believe the written application is strong in terms of criteria. Members raised questions regarding how this project fits in with the organization's overall strategy. Members also deliberated over how much attraction and value this would provide to the ag ground and the city as a whole. So in total, the funding ask was $9,350. We recommended approval of $5,000. And the committee believes the organization has been a beneficiary of several grants from this fund and others in the past, and its financial position is quite solid. The third applicant was Beaumont Minor Ball Association, and their project was to make field improvements in the Four Seasons Park. The opportunity is to install bullpens and potentially scoreboards to create tournament level fields, which will strengthen the organization's ability to attract high level tournaments to the park and the city. This is a new applicant where the committee was extremely pleased with the strong presentation, even though the project description was weak in many areas. The committee was quite pleased again with the big aspirations that this organization has to strengthen the park and bring additional tournaments to the park and the city, which will potentially also have some economic development spin-offs as well. The funding ask was $10,000, and we are recommending $10,000 for capital expenditures. It was also noted by city administration that the fields are on city property and that various agreements and approvals will be required. The fourth application was from the Beaumont Society of School Dance. Here, the opportunity was to purchase additional disinfecting and cleaning fogging machines, excuse me, to increase utilization time of the studio. It was indicated that currently it's taking between about 15 minutes to clean the area so that it follows the COVID-19 safety protocols. And by using a fogging machine, that could be reduced to 5 minutes. In the end, this will allow more participants to go through the program in the sort of the time frame that's available to them. Again, the project description was relatively weak, but the presentation provided a stronger rationale for some level of support. The project was very much focused on COVID-19 impacts on student enrollment, lower revenues being experienced, and increased costs of disinfection and cleansing protocols. Committee members noted the limited benefits and the impact of this project. We don't see any sustainability beyond COVID, and the organization did have a healthy balance sheet. The fund ask was $10,000. The committee is recommending $5,000 for capital expenditures to purchase additional fogging machines, but not consumables. The final applicant was the Artists Association of Beaumont. And the opportunity here was to provide COVID-19 relief to residents by creating a Beaumont art walk, displaying the works of local artists. We believe this is very timely, much needed, as the council members have indicated in the past. We would all wish we had some relief to use outdoors better. This will help to bring some artists and allow residents to go outdoors and increase activity downtown. It was also noted that there may be potential delays or disruptions due to COVID-19 restrictions and or weather. The fund ask was $2,450, and the recommended amount is the same for rental of equipment. So with that, that concludes my report. I'll be happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gill. I do appreciate the comprehensive report, and to be fair, you answered all of my questions that I had during your report. So I will open it up to questions from members of council. Councillor Danluck, followed by Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Mr. Gill, for your work in this committee. Much appreciated, and the committee members as well. Just to clarify briefly, I know when I went through the information, the other four applicants seem to be much more bricks and mortar equipment related. When I saw the description for the Beaumont Society School of Dance, it did look more of a operational nature, but your presentation verbally did clarify that the 5,000 grant approved is more towards buying actual fogging equipment, so it's not operational in nature. That's what I thought you said. Just to clarify, that is that's what it swung the approval for the Beaumont Society School of Dance?
Yes, very much so. The committee did recognize the different costs that the applicant had presented, and recognizing the criteria and the mandate of this particular program. So yes, the recommendation is for capital expenditure for the purchase of additional fogging machines.
Excellent. Thank you for clarifying, and I do appreciate your service. Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Stout, followed by Councillor Barnhart. You're on mute, Councillor.
Is
There you go.
that better?
Got you now, yeah.
His headphones got a mute switch built into them. My apologies. Thank you, Your Worship. Great presentation, Mr. Gill. That was very succinct and very detailed. And I had a couple of questions like the mayor that you basically answered before I got the opportunity to ask them. So thank you very much for doing that. It did raise another question, however, which was that a couple of times you referred to the project specification being presented being weak 2 or 3 times. And I'm wondering, does that raise a concern that maybe we need to do a better job of describing to potential applicants, and I don't know whether that's council or whether that's the Beaumont Grant Funding Committee, do we need to do a better job describing to applicants what it is that we want them to, what a good project request, project spec looks like, or what we're expecting to see?
This is my second term on this committee, Councillor Stout. So in the first round, we did make some recommendations to address some of those concerns that you've just alluded to. I think going forward, what we recognize is that the criteria is not bad, and there could be some tweaks here. The reality is that we're working with non-profit organizations, individuals who are probably not as well versed in articulating the requirements so that's why I said the verbal presentations, excuse me, help to clarify a lot of the issues that we had. So there's an opportunity perhaps to help people with maybe some grant writing capability, but it's recognized that they're volunteers, they're hardworking, there's limited on time. So sometimes that's a limitation. It's not necessarily a limitation of their desire to do something good in the community.
I understand. No, I think that's a great answer. And so yes, what you're actually doing that in the presentation part then is eliciting from them what you're not seeing in the written presentation then, if I understood you correctly.
That is correct.
Great, thank you, appreciate it.
Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Gill. I really do appreciate the hard work that it takes to get these grant applications juried and decisions made. So I appreciate what you and your committee members have done. My question, though, is going to be directed to the administration, to Mr. Suter. And I'm just curious about the future and arts community. When they apply, will they be applying to this pot for this pot of money, or will there be an additional pot of money through the Arts Council? I've lost the thread of that. So could you remind me what our plan is supposed to be around the arts community and their applications?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councilor Barnhart. My understanding is that the Arts Council will be the one that decides. There'll be a funding package in the budget that will be administrated through that body. So the arts groups would not come through this community grant program. There's been some conversation about how to streamline all of this grant application process. We haven't finalized on any recommendation yet, whether it all should one package, 2 packages. There's a variety of things that we see in the budget now that we would like to try to streamline. But to answer your question, yes, the Arts Council would be the body that would basically administer and recommend where those funds go, specific to arts and culture.
So the reason it's come this year is because that process has not yet been established?
That's correct.
And there's additional funding, or is it the same one pot and council will have to look at that?
We'll make a recommendation for next year for that, but yes, it would be one pot for the arts and culture, and this community grant would be an independent, separate piece that they would not funnel through.
And one further question, would festivals and events be in this pot, or will there be room for that to be looked at separately as well? Because I find when we compete against sports and recreation, arts and festivals, it's really hard because they just have different realities. So that's, and maybe this is not the right time to be asking the question, but it came to mind when, so if you have an answer, I'm all ears, but if not, I'll bring that up at another time.
I think my answer would be we're going to probably come back with a recommendation as to how to properly package all of it rather than its current state. Yes.
Okay. Thank you for that, Mr. Suter.
We do appreciate that, and we do recognize that when council put this committee into place to do this particularly hard bit of work of deciding who gets the money, that it was a bit of a work in progress, and now we've gone through 2 or 3 iterations of it, and so happy to see that we're thinking about making improvements. But I am truly grateful for the work this community this committee does. It's truly thankless when you have to figure out who gets the money. So I do appreciate it. Is there a member of council willing to move the recommendation that council award the following current grants as recommended by the Beaumont Grant Funding Advisory Committee? Councillor Van Newkirk had your hand up first. You're on mute, councillor.
So moved, your worship. Thank you.
Discussion on the motion. Okay, seeing none, call the question. All in favor? And that carries. Councillor Hendricks. That carries unanimously. I do appreciate it. Once again, thank you very much to the committee. It's lots of hard work, and appreciate everything you guys do.
Thank you, Mr. Gill.
Which brings us to item 8D, 80 acres development project. And I think Councillor Hendricks had a.
Your worship, thank you. Just at this point, I'd like to declare pecuniary interest. So under section 172 of the Municipal Government Act, I wish to declare a pecuniary interest on this matter. My pecuniary interest is embedded within the relationship my company, Hendricks Construction Limited, has with the development company actively working in the Centerville site area.
Thank you very much, Councillor. We appreciate that, and we'll give you a call or a text when we're done this item.
Thank you.
Mr. Suter.
Thank you, your worship. Subject is 80 acre development project. There's 2 recommendations before council this evening. Number 1, the council approve an increase in expenditures to the 80 acre development capital project in the amount of $1,567,600 with funding of $1,417,600 coming from grants and $150,000 coming from community contributions. The second recommendation that council defer the Town Square capital project for 2021 and release the grant funding associated with that project so that it is made available for other capital projects. A little bit of background. This is a long document, so I'm not going to go through every paragraph, but I'll summarize as best I can, your worship. As part of 2020 approved capital budget, the 80 acres development project was funded in the amount of $1,225,000. Project was intended to fund exploring options for the city-owned 80 acres on the Township Road 505 west of Range Road 243. Detailed design was done in consultation with stakeholders, including user groups, area developer, and Beaumont Long Range Planning Department. Location was deemed to be suitable for the development of recreation facilities, and through engagement and analysis, established a concept for 4 ball diamonds and a dog off-leash park, as well as an applicable parking space. Once developed, this facility would replace the diamonds number 4 and 5 that are planned to be removed in 2021 to make way for the construction of the multi-use field at Four Seasons Park as part of our 2021 capital program. On May 4th, 2021, administration received qualified tenders for the project at the 80 acre development. These tenders show that in order to complete the project as initially scoped and designed, the approved budget of $1,225,000 would not be sufficient funds. In an effort to move forward with this capital project, competitive bid process was followed, and the scope included 4 ball diamonds, 2 at 225 feet, 2 at 275 feet. These dimensions will allow for flexibility for baseball, fastball, and slow pitch with various age groups and competition levels. A graveled parking lot with road access to accommodate up to 220 vehicles, post and rail fence perimeter, an off-leash dog area, 4 acre fence rectangular, which features contoured berms, 553 meters of gravel walking trails, trees, and shrubs. Power to site would be brought in to allow for lighting, as well as potential future expansion for potential scoreboards and any other amenities. There's also, as part of the design, a space allocated for a potential 5th diamond at a 225 feet dimension, if the opportunity were to present itself. Otherwise, it was earmarked for just an open grass space. In addition to the scope listed above, the Beaumont Blitz Association, Fastball Association, has expressed an interest in partnering on the project to source sponsorship revenue in order that we can enhance this project, for example, with dugouts, bleachers, and electronic scoreboards. Administration has included an additional $150,000 in this total budget for those enhancements, which would only be incurred and expensed should they secure adequate sponsorship. And finally, Beaumont Minor Baseball has submitted the grant through the Blue Jays Care Foundation for a Field of Dreams ball diamond. And we all know at this point that announcement came last Friday that they were successful on their grant application. The intention would be that they would build this Field of Dreams in the unallocated open space that we had made room for, which would be suitable for another 225-foot diamond. At this point, administration understands that this fifth diamond added to this project would be at no additional cost to the city other than the included earthworks, topsoil, and grass that we had planned to do in that open space. Considering the initial project scope, the expanded off-lease dog park, and the potential enhanced amenities, the budget for the project would need to be increased from the current approved amount of $1,225,000 to $2,792,600. Administration recommends the council approve this full scope, and if supported, we would intend to get this work done in 2021. The second piece of this RFD is related to recommendation number 2 on the Town Square project. As part of the 2021 approved capital budget, council approved funding for a Town Square project in the amount of $750,000. That project was to develop a detailed urban park plan in downtown Beaumont that would provide a space for passive and programmed recreation and cultural activities. Since that budget workshop and passing of the capital budget, administration has learned and continues to be in discussion with developers regards to lands in that area adjacent. These discussions involve potential projects that have the potential to move forward this fall of 2021 and continue into the spring of 2022. These developments also look to establish potential below-grade infrastructure that will be necessary and to ensure the construction will not have a negative impact on the adjacent lands. There could be always a risk. Considering the potential private development and activity and interest in this area, administration believes it would be prudent to defer this capital project of construction of the Town Square in 2021. Therefore, we're recommending that the approved Town Square project be deferred and the $750,000 allocated in grant funding be released and available to be reallocated to other capital projects such as the 80-acre development. If council approves that recommendation, administration would bring forward a revised Town Square capital project as part of the 2022 budget process for consideration. And your worship, I think I've summarized as best I can those 4 pages, and I'll be happy to attempt to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Suter. Do appreciate it, and do appreciate all the work that's gone into this project to date. And it's nice to see it starting to move forward and get on the roll here. I will open it up to questions from members of council. Councillor Mungoff-Swain, followed by Councillor Van Newkirk.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship, and thank you, Mr. Suter, for getting us here today. It was a super exciting time. I think we're, as council, have been talking about how we can improve our recreational space, and here's an amazing project for us to be able to move forward on. I wanted to quickly just start by just acknowledging the user groups and particularly some of the volunteers who put the time into it. We all heard about you reference the Jays Care Foundation piece, and just an incredible work by that organization to get that. The Beaumont Blitz coming forward with their sponsorship, working together with us in the partnership, but also specifically the Better Dog Park community, or the old dog park fraternity, I guess, that have been really at this for many, many years. And there are many residents who I know are really interested in that, who aren't even, don't even live in Beaumont. And so this has been a long struggle and fight for them. So I just wanted to recognize all the efforts to get us to this point. And particularly I wanted to call out the petition, or the Better Dog Park community, their campaign, for lack of a better term. As councillors, we get lobbied a lot through different areas, some on social media, and a lot of the times not always positive, but I think they demonstrated and showed how, you could put a positive tone to a message and get that across to council and administration. So I just wanted to acknowledge that and thank the community there for a really positive outreach. I think we've really got kind of three discussions here. I know the recommendation is into two, but I did want to split this up a little bit. My first is around, I'll focus on the ball diamonds, and then I'll get into the dog park, or I'll leave it to you, Your Worship, if you want to go around the horn and then come back on one issue. But so specifically on the ball diamonds, the 4 diamonds look great, excellent. I'm excited about that. Really appreciate the overview, the layout, the detail there. My question is around the 5th one, and recognizing the grant that the Beaumont Minor Ball got for the 5th one. Mr. Suter, in your comments, you had mentioned that so the city is not contributing any additional funding for that 5th diamond. But I guess my concern would be that $130,000 that they were got for the grant is incredible. That money is not easy to get, but I'm not sure that is enough in order to get that 5th diamond. My interest here, and I've got a couple of questions, but my interest here is to make sure that we essentially approve this overall concept once and for all, and provide enough capital so that we can go forward with a solid plan and not have to come back later on and potentially look at additional asks. So I guess that the first question I would ask of you, Mr. Suter, and then I'll have a follow-up from Mr. Dowler, would be, have you looked at what it would cost? Have you been in discussions with the Beaumont Minor Ball Association? What additional funding would they need potentially on top of the $130K to be able to build this Field of Dreams that they're looking to do?
Through Your Worship, to Councillor Monkoff-Swain, yes, we've had some conversations preliminary back when they wrote for the grant, as well as we have a meeting set up for this Thursday actually to discuss the details. At the time they wrote for the grant, some of the information that we had talked about with what they were hoping to do with this, I mean, this wouldn't be just a regular diamond. They want to make this a showpiece, if you will, which of course would make more amenities available to it. But if the pricing that we're seeing for them to deliver what I think we'd initially talked about, they would need probably an additional $200,000. I think now that would be up to them, I suppose, as to what they would be willing to pare back from that. But I think the intention would be to deliver that marquee diamond, like I said, and looking at everything that was listed on that, it goes into that. I think that would be a safe number of about 325 all in with their 130 grant. So there'll be a gap there of about 200.
Thank you for that, and fully appreciate and recognize that this is a marquee diamond, and we don't want it to be 50% funded. So maybe I'll go to Mr. Dowler here for a quick follow-up. Mr. Dowler, you've indicated that we can fund this through grants. Obviously, we've taken off the $750K from the town square. If council was to entertain looking at that additional funding, do we have enough in the grant pool? I know we're pretty tight there. Just curious if council considered that additional $200K. I'm curious if we had that in grant funding available.
So to your question, Councillor Monkoff-Swain, the short answer is yes. Right now, just looking at where we're currently sitting with grant funds available, given that the province did provide some increased allocation. Now, keep in mind that allocation is from future years. So technically speaking, we do have grant dollars available that could cover off the 200,000. There's other complicating factors or pieces to consider, I guess, in that $200,000 big picture isn't a substantial amount of money, but again, you are technically speaking taking it from future years at this point.
Thank you, and I guess my interest here is making sure that we do it once and we do it right. And if we need a little bit of additional dollars here, I'd rather council have this discussion, sign off on it, then come back later in July, August, when we potentially need some additional funding to get them over. I know that the Minor Ball Association are going to do and work hard on their own fundraising to get things, but I think that that additional fundraising is commendable for sure, but that should be for those additional amenities, that the luxury items, I guess, for lack of a better term, not for the basics of getting a ball diamond. So there is precedent here for the city partnering with other organizations. We did it with an outdoor rink, and I think we as council should consider that. So I'll leave it there with my comments, Your Worship. I think you can appreciate where I'm going here. I'll let others see if they have any thoughts on that one, and maybe we'll tackle the ball diamond piece up front. So those are my initial comments, and really appreciate the report and time put into this. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we will divide this topic up, and we will stick with current comments on Councillor Moncalfe-Swain's proposed extra funding for the 5th ball diamond before we entertain comments on other parts of this ask. So proceeding down this path, I have Councillor Van Nieuwkerk, followed by Councillor Danlock, followed by Councillor Stowe. Councillor Van Nieuwkerk.
Yeah, sure. I'll save my other detailed question for later. That's fine, Mayor. Thank you for clarifying the process. Yeah, and I'm in the same headspace as Councillor Moncalfe-Swain around getting these funds allocated and moving forward with a solid funded plan to make sure that this diamond is all the way funded and we're not having a conversation later. So that's my comments on this one, Mayor, and I'll chime back in on a different topic with another question.
Fair enough. Thank you very much, Councillor. Keep that in the back of my head. Councillor Danlock, followed by Councillor Stowe.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think Councillor Moncalfe-Swain read my mind with his comments. I concurred his comments entirely. If we could for a moment, Paul, could you put on attachment number 1 on the screen, the West Record Site overall layout, if you wouldn't mind, please? Help emphasize my point I want to make just very briefly for the council to consider. And my thoughts simply are, I understand Mr. Dollar's comments that we may be taking 200 grand from a future grant allocation. I understand that word of caution. I appreciate that. But what I'm getting at is that should we not approve the extra money for the potential 5th diamond, that we've got money coming from the Blue Jays to offset some of that cost, we'd have to build what we're seeing right now in front of us this year. And then if we wanted to wait next year, for the extra 200 grand to build the 5th diamond, we've got to bring equipment in somewhere on this diagram to actually do the work to make that 5th diamond. It'd be very disruptive. It would cost a lot more because we're doing work after the fact. So I think it'd be very prudent for council to allocate some little extra dollars right now, have money for that 5th diamond to, as Councilor Moncalfe-Swain said a moment ago, do it right the first time. With the Blue Jays grant at our disposal now, this changes the perspective on the 5th diamond somewhat. I'm fully supportive of the idea of doing it right the first time. And on that diagram illustrates my point. There'd be a lot of disruption to do it next year. And I think the Blue Jays granted and contingent on having it done in the near future. I'm not sure the exact timeline on that grant, but I do believe it's relatively near future. So I'm wholeheartedly agreeing with the idea of doing it right the first time, as mentioned earlier. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Stowe.
Thank you, Worship. Yes. So if I understand this correctly, 200. So if what I'm hearing correct, if my understanding is correct, then we've got an extra $200,000 to add to the, what was the final total? 2,792,600. So we now go to 2,992,600. The statement that was that originally included that there was no extra expenditure to the city for the Field of Dreams ball, the 5th ball diamond, wouldn't actually be true then. Is that correct?
Not necessarily. Ooh, Mr. Shooter? Mr. Dell?
Well, rather than saying it's not true, then let's say that would have to be modified.
Through to Councillor Stowe, administration had not recommended as part of this package to fund that.
Right.
When this document was written and that grant was just being announced, as well as we haven't nailed down with baseball their intentions completely, but that's why that recommendation was not put in there.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just trying to understand what the full impact of modifying this now becomes. Thank you.
I see Councillor Moncalfe-Swain and Councillor Van Nieuwkerk popped up, but before we go for round 2, does anybody else want to get in on round 1? Quick question for you, Mr. Schiller, Mr. Dell. What are we carrying for a contingency in the 2,000,007? Is it?
Your worship, about 10%.
About 10%. Okay. We've all seen how fast that gets eaten. Okay, round two, Councillor Van Newkirk, followed by Councillor Margoswin.
Yeah, just a question for Mr. Suter. In your collaboration with the Beaumont Minor Ball Association, were there some caveats on when the spend has to happen with that grant? Are you aware of those? Taking construction into the next year, just following on Councillor Daniluk's comments there, beyond being disruptive, I think that might be outside of the terms of the Jay's grant as well. So are you aware of that, Mr. Suter?
Yes, Councillor Van Newkirk. I'm just trying to find it, but I understood that had to be expensed this year.
Yeah, I think so too. So, that on top of what I said previously is, where my support comes from. Councillor Daniluk raises a great logistical point as well around, disrupting and getting everything done and then having to open it all back up again and whatnot. So that's all. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Margoswin, followed by Councillor Daniluk, and then we're going to move on to another topic.
Yeah, thank you. And the one thing I was remiss not to mention is I know that Beaumont Minor Ball put a lot of time and effort into this, and part of that was the exclusivity of that diamond. Mr. Suter, could you just quickly speak to that as part of the agreement, I guess, for lack of a better term, with the Jay's Care Foundation and then the City of Beaumont?
Sure.
Sorry, I was clicking too many things there. I'm just trying to find what the documentation they provided me. I'm just frantically searching my email here on that.
Okay, I'll let you go on that one. I guess my point was, I don't, and just because the city is potentially partnering, I still think this is their diamond, for lack of a better term. This is in order to help them get over the hump. And the other comment I wanted to make here is, I guess, two comments just to reinforce. And I think later in the process, I'll be bringing a motion forward. So the first one is that if we don't provide this funding, there is potential that they're not able to find that additional funding and would not be able to meet the conditions of that grant and get that fifth diamond built. But the second piece is, we're approving it here, and I don't want to be presumptuous. I haven't spoken to Minor Ball about this, not my job. And so, Paul, that's your job. If we approve this additional 200K and the Minor Ball say, actually, we don't want it from the city, we'll find other sources of revenue, then great, no problem. I just want to make sure we've got it there. Worst case scenario is that you don't spend that extra 200K and that carries on within our grant pool. So I think it just makes logistical sense, as Councillor Daniluk mentioned. And I'd rather just wrap this up in a nice little bow, call it $3 million and move ahead. So those are my comments here. I appreciate, Mayor, you want to move forward. Do you want me to hold off the motion until once we close off?
Yeah, let Councillor Daniluk have his say, and then I think Councillor Van Newkirk's got a couple of questions. Yeah, we'll move to motions in a minute. Okay. Councillor Daniluk.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. Just one last quick comment, and speaking for myself only, when council did approve the letter of support for the Mona Baseball to approach the Blue Jays for the grant, I expected in my own mind that they would get some funding for a diamond and would require some additional funding from the city to make that diamond happen. So that's my expectation. So we're here now. The grant was fortunately approved, but I'm not surprised in my mind that they may need some additional money to make that fifth diamond happen. So I supported the idea of the grant back then because I fully expected to offer them some support to get that fifth diamond done. So I'm very happy to support the forthcoming motion. I believe the Councilor Margoswin will be bringing forward additional funding. This is my personal opinion. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm headed down where Councilor Margoswin's going. I think the way to do this though is to not allocate money to the diamond, but to allocate money to the contingency fund, and so that if it gets spent, it gets spent. If not, it goes back. So
yeah, I agree with your comment, Mayor Stewart, on that way of doing it. I agree with that part of it too. So let's move on at your convenience.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we'll close off on the fifth diamond. Mr. Suter.
Thank you, Worship. I just did some follow up there. It looks like the project has to be finished by November 15th, according to the terms of this year. And Councillor Daniluk did raise a good point about logistics of coming back later. And as well, there's also the factor when you have a contractor on site, it's a change order to do this piece, for example, and you could potentially save significant dollars from bringing someone else back a year later to do something else. So from that perspective, that makes sense. If I can just provide that clarity there.
Appreciate that, Mr. Suter. Okay, so we're closed off discussion. I appreciate your comments. I think I know where council's headed, but we will open it up to, I know Councillor Van Newkirk had another question he wanted to ask.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. This is a detailed question and a measurement kind of question, and I did give administration a heads up on this so they could think about it a bit. And when we've had a lot of discussion about this piece of land and, it being 80 acres. So, it's half a quarter section. It's a quarter section long and half a quarter section wide, thereabouts. And one of the things that I reflected on as this design came back in front of us was the ability for us to access in the future the land south of what is proposed in the diagram. And I just wondered if administration has any comments or future plans, or if there is in fact still room, I don't know how many meters you need, X number of meters for a road, X number of meters for ditches, or something to be able to scoot down one of the sides of this development and, presumably build a campground, a dog, BMX parks, and, all those other exciting things we could do with the land. But there's not much excitement there if we build ourselves off access. So maybe just a comment on that, Mr. Suter. Thank you.
Through your worship to Councillor Van Newkirk, the design is allowed for 10-meter buffer on either side of the development boundary to the property line. So I'm told that's enough room for access. And part of the reason we left that was for farming access right now to our leasee rents and farms that land. He still needs to get in there at times. As well as you say, there could potentially then be a road built on either the west side or the east side for future. We don't know what the future holds for the rest of that space, obviously, but you're right. There's definitely a buffer there of 10 meters on either side of the development boundary to the property line.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And, I was probably remiss in not bringing this comment up sooner, and apologies for that, but we haven't had that discussion, I don't think, to this point about access to the south. So I didn't want to miss the opportunity to ask the question while we're still talking about diagrams and we're not quite pushing dirt yet. So thank you for that. That's my conversation for that topic, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you very much, Mr. Suter. Lots of good work and fast work. Definitely supportive of the project. I think it's great to be doing this now. I have one question, and I'm hoping that it's a simple answer. You mentioned that you've been in touch with of course, the user groups. The area developer, if I'm not mistaken, that's Elan and Dream Development. Have they had any concerns, and have they been addressed in terms of the future development there?
Through your worship to Councillor Barnhart, they were engaged back in the fall and actually were provided concepts that we were working on as well. They actually countered with a few concepts of their own, which actually pushed the development way to the south of the property, which just was going to drive the costs in our minds way up to get down to that piece. As well, the further south you go on this parcel, it's very wet. And there's a lot of environmental issues that then you get into, and there is MR designated in the ASP, if I recall, for 2 school sites to the south. But to answer your question, they were engaged. They offered some different solutions. We landed here, and they're very much aware of where we're at. So,
and it haven't put their projects in jeopardy at this point, as far as you can see.
No, I mean this would be further down the road from what they're working on now, I'm told. So.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Suter.
Councillor Danluck.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. Are you taking general comments now on the entire project as a whole?
I am, yeah, because I think we're through questions. So
okay, thank you very much. Mr. Suter, I'm looking at the diagram again, the attachment 1, and I wish it was almost in a 3D because I'm very excited of the layout. I'm seeing the 4-acre dog park with the sculptured land and the walking trails, and to see it in a 3D would be very, very cool. I'm not being critical, not seeing it in 3D, but I'm trying to visualize it in 3D, and I think it's going to be a phenomenal project. I'm also very excited about the off-leash at the bottom, the 8 acres. It's going to be, my understanding is just basically grass and fencing, so the dogs can run hard all they want. So I think it's a great compromise between having a very sculptured and manicured and very professional looking dog park, coupled with a big area to let the dogs just run, and in the future development for a bigger dog park in the future. So I think you've done a very good job with consultant designing what's in front of us right now, and I'm very excited how it's going to look when we get it completed. That's what I'm hoping 3D be kind of a way to see the in 3D, but it's 1D right now, but it looks impressive when it's all done. So thank you for the design work. I'm very excited how this is going to come to fruition should we vote it forward this evening. Thank you very much.
Okay, I hearing where council's going. I see your hand, Councilor Margolis, but I think we're ready to start throwing some motions on the table. So I will look to you because I know you wanted to make one. So let you have a comment and then we'll let you make a motion.
Yeah, more just a thank you for administration. You know, we when we had this initial conversation going from 4 to potentially 12, you know, I appreciate administration going back to the drawing board and taking a look at this. I did just want to set expectations clearly here that, as Councillor Danelak mentioned, that first 4 acres is going to be, my understanding, it's going to have that sod and the trails and all the amenities that come with that. The other 8 acres is going to be seeded. And so there'll be an opportunity to use that during the winter months, and then, you know, seeding whether it takes one or 2 growing seasons to get that really up to speed. So might be a little slippery and soggy in the spring, and we'll make sure that we grow that up. But I think from a fiscal responsibility perspective, I agree with the recommendation not to fully sod the full 8 acres right now. I think that makes sense for us to seed that and make sure we get those first 4 acres, and then I'm really excited to see how that additional 8 acres go. So just from an overall concept plan, you know, I know there are a lot of folks who are very interested in making sure that this just wasn't 4 acres. And so with the proposal in front of us with 12, I'm super excited and just really appreciate administration's work to work with council on this and find that additional space. I think it's going to be very, very well received in the community. As it relates to a motion, Your Worship, and this is where it always gets dangerous, where I make these things up on the fly and frantically look for our legislative coordinator to help us through this. But essentially, I'd like to make a motion to add an additional $200,000 to the contingency for the West Recreation site. And hopefully that language is clear enough to come from grants, I should say. And hopefully that language is clear enough, and Miranda will save me from my own motion here.
How about we do this? That council approve an increase in expenditures to the 80 acres development capital project in the amount of $1,760,600 with funding of I'm going to let you guys work the math out, coming from grants and $150,000 coming from community contributions, with the extra $200,000 being applied to the contingency.
Makes much more sense, which is why I shouldn't be doing this on the fly. So thank you for that. Miranda, does that work for you? Basically, all we did is just add $200K to that initial number.
Yes, I've captured that. Thank you.
Discussion on the motion.
If I could just quickly speak to it. I won't repeat my comments that I made about why I think this is important to do, but just really want to stress that you know, this is a community-led project, and you know, want Mr. Suter to, and I know he will be engaging with the Beaumont Line and Ball Association on this. Again, if council is, you know, if that support there is wanted, then great. But just want to make sure that this is still the BNBA's, you know, dream, and hopefully council is providing some support. But if there is another vision, then certainly no offense will be taken, and we'll figure out where else to use that. So just want to make sure that that is clear, that this is their vision, and super excited to get this going, and can't wait for opening day, and maybe we'll have Laddie come out and hit a couple of bombs on a 225-foot field here. So really looking forward to that, and I will be supporting this motion in total. This is really exciting for the community.
Councillor Stout, followed by Councillor Danelak.
Thank you, Your Worship. Could I I know you didn't add up the quantities in your head. Could I actually get a motion in written form so that I can just fully understand exactly what the amounts are that we're voting on, please?
Sure. Can you type that into the chat? Thanks.
Yeah, I can. Just give me one moment, please.
Sure.
Thank you.
While we're waiting, do you have any further comments, or can I let Councillor Dunlop have a go while we're waiting for that?
Sure. No, that was what I wanted to raise on this one.
Okay, Councillor Dunlop.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to speak last point in favor of the motion. I think it's prudent, as I've said before, to do things right the first time. Our council's done a very good job, in my opinion, of doing that in our mandate. Taking the bold steps sometimes need to be taken, and this is a bold step in the right direction to support a local group who secured funding from a very unique source, and I'm very excited to support the motion. Thank you very much.
Okay. Councillor Van Newkirk.
I'm going to give Miranda a couple more minutes here, and I'm going to say that as I looked at the diagram and thought about it, I was trying to envision the different things and stuff and events and planning items and that could all be done with this space. There's I see room for a concession. I see room for bleachers in the future. Obviously, we've talked about scoreboards. There's an opportunity for a dugout. There's probably room there for batting cages and all these types of things. So this is a tremendous project, and it's a real good boon for the region. But the bolt-on amenities to a project like this are almost as exciting as the project itself. So that's what I'll add. Thank you.
Yeah, let's get the first project done first, though.
But good point, Steve.
Yeah. Just give the city clerk a minute or two here. Mr. Schwartz.
I'm just going to say for brevity, while Miranda's putting this together, if you look at the original motion, what you're adding is $200,000 to the first number. So as Mayor Stewart said, it would be $1,767,600. The rest of that line can stay the same. You can add to be added to the contingency, but it really doesn't add a whole lot of value to the motion. So for simplicity, Miranda put up the motion here. Yeah, so she's added with the contingency, and that's fine too. So.
It would actually be $1,617,600 coming from grants, and $150,000 coming from community. Yeah, there's your motion.
Just want to be clear. I think administration gets the intent of it for that 200, like very generically, it says contingency plan, but you know what we're looking for here. You don't need to be specific to that diamond yet. So I'm seeing a lot of hit one. Thank you.
I don't think we need to beat it up. Further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? And that carries unanimously. Exciting days. Is there a member of council willing to move the council defer the Town Square capital project for 2021 and release the grant funding associated with the project so it is available for other capital projects? Councillor, who is first? Councillor Danlock.
Thank you, Your Worship. So moved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? Call the question. And that carries unanimously. Appreciate that. And I'm just looking at Mr. Shooter. We're done with motions. We're done with this item. We have what we need.
I think, Your Worship, we have what we need. Thank you very much.
Awesome, exciting. Looking forward to seeing some dirt getting moving. Great job, Mr. Shooter. Appreciate all the work you put into this. Which brings us to item 9, bylaws. There are no bylaws before us this evening, which leads us to councilors' inquiries and reports. Do members of council have questions for administration this evening? Councillor Van Newkirk.
Thank you, Your Worship, and the administration. I've come armed with 3 questions tonight. two from the community and one that I think is a good news story that we can tell a bit. So first question from the community tonight is just if administration could give a little bit of background on the limits of number of paper bags for leaves and grass. It's currently set at 5. And ultimately when when neighbors and neighborhoods have more, kind of what we see is the neighbors distributing them amongst themselves and ultimately it getting picked up anyways. But just wondering historically or who decided or why the number of 5, if you could share some information on that, please, and thank you.
Certainly. Thank you very much, Councillor Newkirk. The number 5 is pretty much an established norm in the industry, and it's a contractual obligation with the waste management company that collects our waste. We also supplement that with a large bins at the operations yard, and people are able to go there Monday to Friday from 4:30 till 7:30. There's a 2-month period in the spring and 2 months in the fall, and we advertise that, and it's actually got quite the good uptake. This is the second season, so if we're back up here, last fall was the first time we implemented we renegotiated the contract to put the 5-bag limit in. I think we had 2 people that called and was expressing not entirely satisfied with it. We then referred them to our large bins, and we haven't heard anything else. So now this is the spring edification, and so this is the second time. So from our perspective, it's going quite well.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I had a drive by the bins at the public yard there, and they're well marked and accessible. So thank you for that. The second one is kind of a COVID related question, and well, not kind of, it is a COVID related question. So yesterday was the first day of measures, and one of the things that wasn't as clear to me and others, and I actually this afternoon had two calls additionally on it, was how it will affect, how the new regulations or restrictions will affect our ability for the residents to access and use our outdoor amenities, such as the tennis and pickleball courts, the skate park, playground structures, and even the spray park as we look towards the future and think about warmer weather and greener grass. I'm just wondering if CAO, you could provide a little more guidance on that and maybe point us to the updated portion of the website, or however far you guys have been able to get with this so far. Thank you.
Yes, again, thank you very much. And yeah, you hit it. You can go to our website or the provincial website to get the most up-to-date measures. And I'll talk about that real generally here in a second. And the reason I say that is I was putting an email together earlier today about to update council, about to hit send, and got some amended orders. So they're still pulling this stuff together day by day. I was on a call today with Alberta Health. They have got a draft of the actual order, and now it's being circulated between all the different departments to figure out whether they've got all the right information. So a lot of the answers they don't have. As far as in general, our outdoor amenities, we have no plans at this point in time to close them. So things like our pickleball courts, tennis courts, skate park, playground structures, they are open to the public. There are public restrictions on the number of people and the minimum distancing that are required, but that has been changing from day to day. So what we're asking people to do is respect that 2-meter distancing, respect the fact that we don't want 50 people at these sites. But that said, we're not going to be going and policing that. The Alberta government has said the same thing. They're relying on people to abide by the measures. Our municipal enforcement folks are out educating like we've done from day one, answering questions if people are unsure, and we're trying to get the most up-to-date information to our website on a daily basis. So that's about as much as I could chunk it down, because it is moving on a regular basis.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, it's definitely a moving target. The third and final question for administration, Your Worship, and that is kind of picks up from a conversation or a topic that was brought up at our last council meeting around increased construction and development in Beaumont. And we had some concerns with vehicular traffic, increased amounts and speeding and such. But looking more to the positive side of that, I'm often found driving slower than I should around neighborhoods and around Beaumont, checking things out and looking at neighborhoods and seeing what's being built where. And I love watching things come together and a good plan in action. And one of the things that I've noticed, and obviously residents have as well, is how much both residential and commercial construction is going on in Beaumont right now. And I can only assume that this amount of construction, is definitely a positive thing for Beaumont. But what I don't know and what I'm not clear on is, what do we look like compared to 2019 compared to 2018? And I'm just wondering if administration might be able to do some comparisons there. And, if there's a good news story to tell around that, which it feels to me like there might be, then, perhaps it's something we could share. So I don't know, that's dropping a data table on you or something or whatever else, CAO, but maybe you can comment on that. And I don't know, is there a good story to tell? And if there is, how do we share that a bit? So.
Yeah, absolutely. And all of our monthly and annual permits and construction values for both residential and commercial dating back to 2001 are on our website. So if you, I can drop the link in the chat, but if you go to our website, it's at .ab.ca/446/reports. But from an overview perspective, and I shared some of this a couple of weeks ago, our construction values, if I want to compare them for say February, March, and April from 2021 to 2020, for instance, in February, we're up 187%, March, 201%, and April, 194%. So what does that look like in dollars? In February of 2021, we're looking at about $5.7 million in construction versus $2 million this time last year. And then you can interpolate the rest. The new house builds from 2021 to 2020, again, February, March, and April. February, 188% increase, March, 307%, April, 173%. That equates in dollars. The February of 2020 was $1.8 million in builds. This year, it's 5.2. In March, last year, 1.7. This year, 7 million. We are experiencing exponential growth again. I'm going again because these numbers are almost pushing back to the 2006 numbers. Not quite, but the way it's trending, the activity is absolutely crazy. To the point where we brought in an additional permit services clerk to try and get these business and these development permits out as quickly as we can. And so far, we're able to turn them around just as quick as we were doing last year. So yeah, it's a really good point. We are extremely busy. We're asking people to be patient, but we brought in more help. And again, as I explained a couple meetings ago, this is the front end of this. This affects the entire year because now we get into the build, then we get into the inspections, then we get into the final certificates. So it's very, very busy in Beaumont. And it's exciting.
Oh, it is very exciting. And then there's the race to the finish at the end of the the nice construction season, right? So then your phone calls will be threefold, and you'll get in double and triple phone calls. When are you here? When are you here? So no, thank you for that. So Your Worship, that's my questions for tonight. Thanks to admin for answering them.
Thank you very much, Councillor Van Newkirk. Councillor Daniluk.
Thank you, Your Worship. A quick update request from Mr. Schwartz, if I may. I had raised a concern recently regarding the clump of trees on the St. Vital Toboggan Hill on the east side of it. A clump of trees that's been used, it's been getting quite ratty and a bit of an eyesore. It's also a safety concern. I realize we're looking at doing a cleanup on that project, on that area. Is there an update available, Mr. Schwartz, as to when that may be beginning and your thoughts on that, please, if I could?
Yes, thank you very much, Councillor Daniluk. I actually was able to talk to our director this evening. That the removal of the trees in the bush are scheduled to be completed by the end of June. And the reason that is we've got a number of priority projects that we're doing left over from last year that still need to be done this year. And we have some similar work that needs to be done at the cemetery as well. So we'll bring in the same crew to target both those areas, multiple areas actually. I'm told that the debris and the waste and the garbage was picked up already, but we still haven't gotten in there to clean up the bush and the dead trees, but we will.
Okay, thank you for the update. I'll look forward to letting some people know who've asked me about that since the topic was raised recently in council. Thank you very much, Mr. Schwartz.
Thank you. Seeing no further hands raised. Oh, Councillor Barnhart, and then I'll ask my question.
Thank you, Mayor. And I assume this is also where we can just make a report, a verbal update to council, because I just wanted to say one thing, if I could.
Yep, this is yeah, that was my next question after questions, but yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I jumped the gun there. Tomorrow morning, the municipal conversation number 5 that's sponsored by the Leduc Regional Housing Foundation is taking place. And I just wanted to make sure councillors did get their invitation, and that if they still have time and can make it, I would really recommend it. We have an unbelievable lineup of presenters. I'm not even sure we're going to be able to give them enough time to get, the whole morning is going to be filled with information, and we're going to try to manage that time as well as we can. But I just want to encourage council that it's a great opportunity to see what affordable housing options are available and happening throughout Alberta. And just wanted to put a plug in for that. It's tomorrow morning.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Looking very much forward to attending that. I'll see you tomorrow on that one. So yeah, I do have one quick question. Just wondering if we could get a update on the turf field in Four Seasons in that project and sort of where it's at.
I'm gonna wave that over to Mr. Suter if he's still with us. And he's not.
Okay, I'll follow up with you tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll get back to you.
No rush. Seeing that, is there any members of council wishing to make statements this evening? Seeing none, floor is yours, CAO.
Oh, yeah, thank you. A few things I just very quickly wanted to pass on. Obviously, I'd love to provide the update on COVID and where we're at from as far as case numbers in our community are concerned. Beaumont right now is once again the highest case per 100,000 in the Edmonton region. We are, and I say this all the time, a bit of a caveat is a population. So when we get a jump, it really affects because of our population. So Leduc City, Leduc County, we're ahead of us the last few years. They've seen the last few weeks, they've seen a significant reduction, and we've seen a significant increase. So we've blown right by. In the last 7 days, we've recorded 52 new cases. And we've also recorded 57 recoveries, which is a good thing. Our active case rates right now is sitting at 90. As council is aware, we made the decision was made to close our childcare facility, both the after school care and the early learning childcare, because we had a staff member who tested positive. Though all of those facilities have been shut down for Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and are scheduled to open on Thursday. But I can say that all of the staff have been tested, and all of them have come back negative. All of the close contacts of the children right now that we are aware of have been tested and have come back negative. So it's a really good news story from that perspective. And I've got to thank the staff for their hard work. In these 3 days while we've been down, we've been cleaning that place from top to bottom. We've been fogging it. We've been following all of our protocols. Staff in the interim in these 3 days have gone, and by the time we open on Thursday, 20 of the 23 staff members will have received their first vaccination. So that's a great comfort feeling to the parents. I know Jody and her staff have been in touch with the parents on a regular basis, and the patience and cooperation they've shown us has been second to none. So that is a really good news story. I was on a call today with the province, and I think Premier Kenney talked about the vaccine rollout. It took them 119 days to get the first 1 million vaccines into people's arms. It then took them 29 days to get the second million. And the point that he's trying to make is they are ramping up as quickly as they can. They have suspended the AstraZeneca in Alberta because of supply problems, unlike Ontario, who have suspended it because of other reasons. They want to save the remaining doses so that the people who receive their first shot can get their second shot at the right time. Their goal, once there's 2 million Albertans now that have received at least their first shot. Their goal, once they get everybody the first shot, is in less than 60 days, they will get everybody their second shot. So that's a great news story for our province. Again, it's the way out of this. So people have got to continue to follow the restrictions, the health restrictions, wear your mask, wash your hands, keep your distances, mind your cohorts. We're just about there, but we've still got to follow those. So that's what I wanted to pass along, Council, Mayor Stewart. Thank you.
Appreciate that. it's a good news story. We're not we're plateauing. We're not going up. We're not going down. But at least that's the start of coming out. Appreciate that. Brings us to item 13, notice of motion. Do members of council have a notice of motion they wish to make? Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I have a notice of motion to make. Let's just get it up on screen so I can read it clearly. So my notice of motion is that council direct administration to immediately give 180 days notice of termination to Conduent of our contract for automated traffic enforcement, ATE services with them.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Please, have you provided that to the clerk?
I have.
Thank you. And we will accept your notice of motion and we'll go from there. Which brings us to item 14A, closed session for an economic development update. So can I get a member of council to move us into closed session? Councillor Danlock.
So moved, Your Worship. Thank you.
Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all in favor? That carries unanimously. So we will move into closed session. It's just give the members of the public that may still be watching. We just completed our closed session with our economic development update. There are no items arising for decision or tasks to be done as a result of our closed session. So which brings us to the end of the meeting this evening. So I'd like to thank members of council and members of administration. It was a great meeting. We got lots done, got an exciting project finally fully funded and approved and on the roll. So looking forward to seeing some dirt move. It's going to be a great summer construction season, and I will see you all again next week at Councillor Danlock's Committee of the Whole.